In recent years and even decades, too many people have forgotten that truth. They've forgotten that our ancestors trounced an empire, tamed a continent, and triumphed over the worst evils in history. In every generation, there have been cynics and critics who try to tear down America. It's not working too well lately. But in recent years, the problem grew worse. A growing number used their platforms to denigrate America's incredible heritage, challenge America's sovereignty, and weaken America's pride. We are not going to apologize for America. We are going to stand up for America. No more apologies. We are going to stand up for our citizens. We are going to stand up for our values. And we are going to stand up for our men and women in uniform. Because we know that a nation must have pride in its history to have confidence in its future.
I ain't like these other battle rappers. They talk too much. Saying I can't use the N-word in this battle. My nigga, I just called you.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, it's like some of us seem to believe that we are exempt from this system, that somehow the system of white supremacy doesn't apply to us, and the things that affect other black people won't affect us. Too many of us feel like if we just have a certain thing, or we achieve a certain level, or even if we come from another place, that the system of white supremacy doesn't affect us. But in reality, it affects every aspect of our lives. It affects the type of food we're able to get, to the type of medication we can get. And then we wonder why our health is so bad. The number one cause of death for us is our diets. But we have been stripped of knowledge of self. We don't even understand how our bodies work. Even the way we look at ourselves come from a white supremacist mindset. But that's what happens when it's beat into you for hundreds of years. And today, with the illusion of inclusion, even more of us think we're exempt. And we think somehow racism doesn't apply to us. But even with the passing of somebody like Kobe Bryant, you see how much the lynch law is still in effect. Look how many waited until they heard about his death to disrespect him. But as a black man, no matter how big you are, if a white woman said you did something, her word is taken as gospel. Now, we already know how much white women lie. They're notorious liars. And even though Kobe Bryant was never convicted in court, this white girl had semen from a bunch of other people in the underwear that she was still wearing. And all the evidence shows Kobe Bryant didn't rape anybody. The first thing they do is call him a rapist. But in reality, I don't think anybody should just take a white woman's word on face value based off their history alone. I know I would never take their word as gospel. But so many of us are brainwashed with that turn the other cheek stuff. And regardless of what they did to us for as long as they've been doing it, we still want to give them the benefit of the doubt. We still look for an excuse to give them a pass. But in reality, if we understood how sick they really were and the things they did to us, then we would start taking the appropriate action. In South Carolina back in 1968, just because our people were demanding to be treated like human beings, it led to the Orangeburg massacre where the police opened fire on a bunch of black teenagers. Now, it started because a bunch of college students wanted to desegregate a bowling alley, but the white owner didn't want them there. It was all white. So they organized and got more students and went back to the bowling alley. But this time the police was there already waiting on them. And when the police called in the fire trucks, the black students thought they were going to spray them with water hoses, because that's all they were seeing on TV during the 60s. So then some of the students started getting angry, and one person threw a plate through the window. So the police immediately ran in and started beating them up, hitting them with nightsticks. And they didn't discriminate. They were also beating up teenage girls. One girl had an earring ripped out of her ear. Now, some of the students did try to fight back. One person threw some liquid that hit a cop in the eyes and it injured him badly. But after it was over, at least 15 students were arrested. Now, when the word about what happened started to spread, the black community was pissed off. But the governor of South Carolina tried to blame it on black leaders like Stokely Carmichael, because this was the beginning of the Black Power movement and the end of the Civil Rights movement. But the National Guard was called in, and they brought in tanks trying to intimidate the black community. But not intimidated, the next day the students went back to the bowling alley and destroyed every white-owned business on the way. But the city officials didn't want them downtown, so they told them they would meet them on campus. And then that night, the National Guard and police were ordered to keep them on campus. And by the next night, when the police was still there, in protest, they started a bonfire. But then the police chief called in firefighters to put the bonfire out. Then all of a sudden, one person in the crowd threw a banister and hit a cop, injuring him badly. So then the police and National Guard aimed their guns and shot into the crowd for 8 to 15 seconds straight. And as the crowd was running, they were shooting people in their backs. Some of them were hit in the back of the foot as they were running. Some even got shot in the back of the head. In those few seconds, 30 people ended up getting shot. 27 were seriously injured, including paralyzed for life. And 3 people were dead. Samuel Hammond, who was a freshman studying to be a teacher, was shot in the back. Henry Smith, who was a school activist, was shot 3 times, once in the neck. And another 17-year-old high school student, Delano Middleton, was just on campus getting a snack, waiting for his mom to get off work. He had nothing to do with the bonfire. He had nothing to do with the protest at the bowling alley. He just happened to be there waiting on his mom and was killed when the police opened fire on him. Then after it was over, one of the 2 only black cops that were there ended up arresting an activist named Cleveland Sellers, and they blamed the whole thing on him. But during the shooting, 28 of the protesters that were shot were either shot in the side or the back. Nobody on campus even had a weapon. But some of the cops claimed they heard small gunfire and they were shooting in self-defense. And they also claimed to be shooting over people's heads. But if they were shooting over their heads, how they get shot in the bottom of their foot as they were running away? Now, the FBI did do an investigation, but of course they covered for the cops. And they never even put together a report about it. Even though 9 of the cops admitted to shooting at the crowd, and they were even charged and went to trial, they were acquitted by an all-white jury after they claimed it was self-defense. And this all-white jury reached a not guilty verdict so fast, they were told to stay in the room a little bit longer so it didn't look bad. And the only person convicted and sent to prison for this massacre was the black activist Cleveland Sellers. And that's only because the judge allowed his charges for inciting a riot to be changed from one date to another, because he wasn't even there at the date they charged him for in the first place. But essentially, the brother Cleveland Sellers, even though he didn't break any laws, it was basically the Black Power movement that was on trial, not him specifically. And he ended up getting sentenced to 1 year hard labor. And I know some of us may say that was the 60s. Those kind of things doesn't apply to us now. We feel like we're exempt. But nothing has changed from 1967 to today. In Connecticut, a mentally ill brother diagnosed with schizophrenia, Mubarak Soulemane, was shot and killed by a Connecticut state trooper. Now let's see how this brother ended up getting shot and killed by the police.
Behind me, the overpass here on Campbell Avenue in West Haven, where the shooting went down at about 5 o'clock last Wednesday afternoon. Family and friends of Mubarak Soulemane at a Martin Luther King Day celebration today. Very somber, still shaking their heads about why their son, their cousin, their nephew was shot to death. It all started as an alleged carjacking at this AT&T store in Norwalk. The suspect then making a getaway along I-95 North.
The white Hyundai Sonata. Yeah. She's in the breakdown lane. I think she might have whacked 3 or 4 cars and almost just whacked us.
State police engaged in a pursuit once Mubarak Soulemane reached Milford, and that was only because it was a carjacking at knife point that was being alleged.
Left lane, passing 40, speeds 80. Sideswiped my cruiser trying to box him in.
Then, after a couple of close calls, the pursuit exited I-95 in West Haven on Campbell Avenue, where it ended beneath the highway overpass.
Get out of the car! Get out of the car!
Those instructions from Trooper Joshua Jackson, but the teen couldn't get out because his door was pinned shut by a cruiser. Then, outside the driver's door, Trooper Brian North yells further instructions.
Go to taser! Taser!
And seconds later, after reporting a weapon was seen, North opened fire.
But I'm asking, was the deadly force of action taken by this nervous police officer the way to go.
She was among numerous family attending a Martin Luther King Day service in New Haven, and the group included the 19-year-old victim's mother.
My son is not a criminal. They want to take the community for all their support.
Just awful to see that today at the Martin Luther King Day service. The family shared autopsy photos with me, and you could clearly see that Mubarak Soulemane was struck at least a half dozen times. You could see on an arm, his chest, and in a hand.
Now, this brother, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, was allegedly involved in a carjacking. So the police were chasing him, and they eventually blocked him in. Now, they told his brother to get out of his car, but he couldn't because his door was pinned. It wouldn't open. And even though the cop couldn't get it open himself, they still tried to say he was resisting. So then one of the cops ended up breaking the window. And then they started tasing his brother. Now, while all this was happening, the other cop, Brian North, was standing on the driver's side of the car. And when his brother Mubarak Soulemane got tased, of course his body started moving, reacting to getting tased. But then the cop, Brian North, claimed he saw this brother was reaching for a weapon. And he claimed his brother may have pulled out a knife. And even if he did have a knife, how would that be a threat to the cop from inside the car? Especially when there's multiple cops and they all have guns. But of course this cop said he was nervous and feared for his life. So he ended up firing 7 or 8 shots at point blank range, hitting his brother at least 6 times, including 4 in the chest. And even though now there's supposed to be an investigation, the police already have their capes on. And of course they're going to stay on code.
Here on Campbell Avenue in West Haven, behind me, the overpass where the where the shooting, I should say, took place on Wednesday afternoon. And one thing made clear today by the Clergy Association of New Haven, they say they feel this shooting was racist. Late Wednesday afternoon, 19-year-old Mubarak Soulemane was shot to death beneath the Campbell Avenue overpass by state police, who said when Soulemane displayed a weapon, later determined to be a knife, Trooper Brian North shot him.
This is all what they say. And what they say does not measure up to what we have heard.
Reverend Boise Kimber says he learned from sources that Soulemane was shot 4 times.
His skin color, they seen that, said they figured that, well, his skin color is a black, pigmentation. We can shoot him.
I really don't know what to feel. I can't believe it. It still doesn't feel real. It still doesn't feel real.
Saeed Soulemane says his brother was a second-year student at Gateway Community College and battled mental health issues, including schizophrenia, but noted he had no prior criminal record before Wednesday, when he was accused of stealing a car at knife point in Norwalk before crashing into several civilian and state police vehicles along I-95.
He was in the car. He was shot sitting down in the car. That doesn't make sense to us.
What we're asking for is that the U.S. attorney will investigate this incident.
Presently, State Police Major Crimes and the Central District Major Crimes and the New London State's Attorney's Office are handling the investigation. And State Police tell me they are aware that both the ACLU and the New Haven Clergy Association do not like it one bit.
Now, I don't know what was going on with this brother, but he was diagnosed with a mental illness. But this brother was a college student and he had no record before this. He had never been in trouble, nothing. And they don't have any kind of history they could bring up. Now, it was only this one cop, Brian North, who felt the need to pull out his gun and start shooting at this brother, and shooting as many times as he did at point blank range. No other cop felt threatened enough to open fire. Now, of course, they didn't fire this cop or even give him a paid vacation, and they definitely won't be charging him. They just gave him desk duty until all of this could fly over. And as soon as things blow over and they become cool, he'll be right back on the streets again. And regardless of what his family thinks, if they're waiting on justice from them, they're going to be waiting for a long time.
Today, family, friends, and, of course, New Haven clergy came out very, very positive following their meeting with Middlesex State Attorney Michael Gaylor and New Haven State's Attorney, who is Patrick Griffin. A week after receiving the devastating news that 19-year-old Mubarak Soulemane had been shot to death by Trooper Brian North after an alleged carjacking and police pursuit, the family feels justice will be served.
They looked us in the eyes and told us that we should have faith in them. They're not gonna be biased, and we feel pretty confident.
They're especially comfortable with the fact that the New Haven State's Attorney will now be assisting in the investigation.
That door has been open to us. We've built a relationship over the last several years.
Reverend Kimber said the family and clergy were also going to meet with West Haven Mayor Nancy Rossi about the incident, since it happened in her city, and some of the West Haven Police Department responded.
We're not so sure that some of those guys or girls should be put on administrative leave.
Now, when we slow down the video from Trooper Josh Jackson's body camera, you can see Mubarak Soulemane turns to his right and either reaches down or toward the back seat before coming up with his right arm and hand. Was this why Trooper North shot? Reverend Kimber believes not.
Well, they had tased him.
Yes.
They had tased him, and so that was a shock to him.
And in other words, what Reverend Kimber is saying is that the tasing caused involuntary body movements and caused his right arm to come up. So that's his theory behind it.
Now, the ACLU said one of the cops may have used a racial slur while they were chasing his brother. But of course the police denied it. But somehow this brother's family believed that because they told him they were going to investigate, that they're not going to lie to them. They said they looked them in their eye and they believed them. They had faith in them. And the police union, they're mad they can't investigate themselves. Although another branch of their organization is going to investigate them, they still have a problem with it. And some of us may believe because we have a different background, we're exempt from this system designed to destroy us. You're going to face the same injustices as all of us. And even though this family has faith in the state attorney and this white woman mayor, I haven't seen the cop face one punishment or get disciplined at all. He didn't even get a paid vacation, just desk duty. But they still believe they're on their side. But they know how to stay on code. And that's why it's important for us to develop a code and stay on that code. We don't have any other choice. We're dealing with a worldwide system designed to destroy us. Instead of having faith in that, we need to have faith in ourselves. Because when we realize who we are and what we could do, we will be able to build anything. We just have to be ready to protect it. And at the end of the day, we are all we got. It doesn't matter your beliefs, where you're from. We have to put all that to the side in the name of protecting our children, our elderly, our women, ourselves. And until we do, then the same thing will keep happening over and over and over.
There's a time in everybody's life, I think, when you just say, I'm going to do what I got to do because something has to change.
All the way through school, from kindergarten to high school, was never mentioned. During history class, it's ignored. It's as if it never happened.
I'd covered a lot of violence. We saw violence at demonstrations. We saw violence in Selma. But nothing prepared us for what happened at Orangeburg.
It just was a thunderstorm that rose and fell in the civil rights movement in the course of about 3 days.
We feel that there was this outsider that came in that took control of the group. And because of that, Orangeburg had its incident.
It was kept hush, hush. I mean, local people don't even know what happened.
Those in power are going to do all that they can to assure that things remain the same.
Students and Orangeburg's black community mounted repeated protests. By 1968, they had desegregated all of the town's public accommodations but 3. The hospital, doctor's offices, and Harry Floyd's bowling alley, just a few blocks from the colleges.
Mr. Floyd, why have you not permitted Negroes to bowl at your bowling alley here in Orangeburg?
Because I have my own customers
that patronize me 52 weeks a year. They support me year in and year out. I need no other business.
Having a night demonstration, anybody who's been around civil rights for a long period of time know that's the worst time because things happen in night demonstrations. They always do. Bad things. With the police out there, it's night. They have their guns drawn. There's no barriers. They're out in the open field.
They were all close together, and you couldn't identify a person or what they had in their hands. We were prepared to do whatever we had to do to stop the situation from escalating.
Somebody threw a banister rail from this old house out there, and it struck a policeman in the face. Just a lucky shot, but it hit him in the face and knocked him to the ground. Of course, policemen, when they see another policeman injured, they get a little bit testy themselves.
I had my camera, and I went out to take a picture of the highway patrol. They were in a stance, and they had the guns up. It was a very impressive, I didn't dream I could shoot those guns.
I didn't know what had happened, and I didn't anticipate what had happened.
When I started having patrolmen, I heard this click, like somebody cocking an M16 or a gun or something. Right after that click, ta-da-da-da-da, bullets just start flying.
A wail goes up from back in the darkness at the crowd of people being hit and wounded. Shotguns, carbines, handguns, lasted for about 10 to 15 seconds.
A voice came up, stop, stop. I don't know who that was. I don't know who it was.
I remember hearing somebody laugh just before we realized we were being shot at. We thought they were shooting in the air.
I remember getting shot in my face and being spun around.
I get there at the same time they open fire. I get shot in the left shoulder, and I could feel it twist the body around when I'm going down to the ground.
I took one step that I can remember, and I got shot maybe this close to my spinal cord.
It's a wonder that more than were injured were injured. I thought every one of them was killed.
It's just shock and alarm at what had happened. And the attitude among the patrolmen varied from they got what they deserved to a couple of people almost so scared they were throwing up.
At least 28 students were shot and wounded.
What's the car?
3 students were killed. Samuel Hammond, a freshman studying to be a teacher, drawn to the bonfire out of curiosity, was shot in the back. Delano Middleton, a 17-year-old high school student, had stopped by the campus, as he often did, for a snack after basketball practice. He suffered 7 wounds, 1 in the heart. Henry Smith, age 18, a student activist deeply involved in his church and ROTC, was shot 3 times, once in the neck.
Yeah, it seems like he was just the kind of athlete, the kind of star that was perfectly cast on the Los Angeles Lakers Kavita.
Los Angeles what?
Cast on the Los Angeles Lakers Kavita.
Did she not say it?
Like the kind of star that was perfectly cast on the Los Angeles Lakers Kavita. If I could ask you to stay with us, we're going to go.
As I know, there's always a lot of hate, pain in the world, and there's always a bunch of terrible stories. And every once in a while, there's a good story. A good story comes out. The guy who got away with rape got his today. Kobe Bryant is a god. I'm here in Charlotte, the home of the team that originally drafted him. Maybe he wouldn't have raped that chick in Denver if he had stayed in Charlotte with the Hornets. But anyway, the point is, dude, it's
A political reporter for the Washington Post is now on administrative leave after tweeting a link to a story about rape allegations against the late NBA superstar Kobe Bryant. Sunday, Bryant's helicopter crashed in California, killing all 9 people on board. The same day, reporter Felicia Somnes posted the link, drawing considerable backlash online. The Post reports Somnes received threats of death and rape and was moved to a hotel after someone published her home address online. The Post says Somnes deleted the original tweet at the request of a managing editor. Members of the Washington Post newspaper guild are protesting Somnes' suspension, writing in a statement, quote, "We believe it is our responsibility as a news organization to tell the public the whole truth as we know it."
I want to make sure you don't have any weapons on you. Don't reach for
Hold on.
Don't resist.
How am I resisting?
You're
resisting a search. I'm resisting. I'm not doing nothing.
Just put your hands behind you.
Man, I am not doing nothing.
Don't say you are.
I'm not doing nothing, man. I am not doing nothing.
Hey,
I'm not doing nothing.
We were just going to pat you down for weapons, man.
Now, he just asked me for some weapons.
Well, now you're under arrest.
Raise your shirt.
Man,
you had a bulge in your pocket. Dude, you just stood up here and said that you sit up here and see now and then I have no weapons on me, man. Man, come on, man. I'm not doing nothing, dude. Man, stop it, man.
No reason
I'm not doing nothing.
No reason.
I'm not doing. I'm not doing.
Quit resisting.
I'm on.
Quit resisting. You're about to get sprayed. If you don't stop,
if
you don't stop, you're gonna get sprayed.
I'm not doing.
You're about to get sprayed.
You're doing something now. No, I'm not.
Stop. You're about to stop. You get it? You're under arrest, man.
Under arrest for what?
For resisting search.
Man, you just, I'm just not doing nothing.
Just follow the officer's
instructions.
Why are you acting
man.
like this? Come on. I'm sorry that he acted that way in front of you, man. Do you know why he was over here? Or?
Yes, sir. He had just came to pick me up.
Oh, you live over here?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
And his car, the thing wouldn't go in reverse.
Oh, okay.
So,
I got you.
But his car wouldn't go in reverse.
Oh, okay.
How long did he sit here?
We've only been back here for about maybe 30 minutes.
30
Because he
minutes?
called the dude to come help us.
How's it going, man?
All right.
Oh, you stay out here?
No, I'm thing it came loose. I'm waiting on the dude to come fix it. To put it in reverse.
All right. So the guy that
Yeah, I just got off the phone with him. I know she probably called y'all.
where'd he stay at?
Oh, he coming off on about South.
Why y'all meeting here?
Oh, cause I can't put it in reverse. My girl ship thing.
Okay. What brought you here, though? You say you don't stay here. What brought you over here?
Oh, I came to pick up my little cousin, and when I went to try to put it in reverse, it wouldn't go in reverse.
Okay.
So this is it. So he finna come.
Your little cousin? Is it her?
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd she stay at?
Oh, she was in the front.
She was in the front? Okay. You don't have any weapons or anything like that on you, do you?
No.
Keep your hands up over here. Put your hand up there.
Hold on.
Don't.
Let's
Yeah.
just
raise
your shirt and show that you don't have any weapons. No, I ain't got no weapons.
All right. I can see something bulging over there. Just making sure. Don't reach in your pockets or anything like that. What's your name? What's your name?
No, this is uncalled for.
No. We get a call on you. We got to ID you. So what's your name?
I'm not doing nothing wrong.
We're just responding to a call from citizens that once said there was some problems over here.
Oh, it's not no problem. As you can see, it's not a problem. I'm not causing any problems. I'm not doing nothing. I'm not hooping and hollering. I'm not causing any problems. I'm not doing none of that. So
Well,
I'm
the
waiting.
officer needs your name for his report.
You have a child in the car with you?
We're here to check welfare on the child. We have the right to find out who the people are that are involved.
It's not that going on. Somebody involved. What is? I mean.
Is there a reason why you don't want to give your name?
Huh?
Why don't you want to give your name, man? And this
here to
take you 5 minutes to get out.
So we can go. I just told you. I mean, I have not committed a crime, sir. It's not a crime. It's not an offense. It's not nothing going on.
We had a call concerning you being in this vehicle and possibly being intoxicated.
Man, yeah.
So right now you're detained. You're being detained.
Come on. No, sir.
As far as that goes, you have to give us your name or you go to jail for failed ID.
What is the big deal about not saying your name? I'm gonna do the pattern.
I mean,
Because he wouldn't let me do the pattern. Okay. I want to make sure you don't have any weapons on you. Don't reach for anything.
Hold on.
Don't resist.
How am I resisting?
You're
resisting assault. How am I resisting? I'm not doing nothing.
Just put your hands behind you.
Man, I am not doing.
Back now with a father claiming racial profiling after an incident at a Chesapeake store.
He says his daughter and her friends were just killing time at a beauty supply store when a manager locked the door and called police on them. A lot to sort out in this. 10 on your side, Aisha Tolliver joins us with more on how the police handled this. Aisha?
Well, guys, I spoke with a lot of people to try to get to the bottom of this, and the father says the girls just can't believe this all happened, and more than anything, he's disappointed.
A Chesapeake father wants justice after he says his daughter was among a group of girls wrongly locked inside a business for a crime they didn't commit.
My daughter and her friends won't ever forget about that. So I just think that's wrong.
Police say the incident happened last Friday at Coco Beauty Supply in the Parkview Shopping Center. The owner of the store says a little over a week ago, a group of girls stole over $1,000 in merchandise. So they printed off this surveillance picture of the suspects and handed them out to nearby businesses in hopes of catching them. Then this past Friday, Reuben Houston says his 16-year-old daughter and 3 of her friends were at the subway in that same shopping center when they noticed a security guard was following them. He says they walked into the beauty supply store a few businesses down. Shortly after entering, Houston says a manager locked the girls inside.
My daughter asked them why can't we leave? She says, you'll find out.
That's when Chesapeake police say they were called and responded about 10 minutes later. After a quick investigation, police realized the girls were not involved with the previous shoplifting incident and they were let go. Houston filed a police report and says he believes this was a case of racial profiling.
I personally think that everybody's going to be a suspect. You know, if you have braids or weave and you're black, I mean, even the kids are suspects now. I mean, I guess mine was.
I spoke with the beauty supply manager who locked the girls inside. She says it all started because a Subway employee called security on the girls, thinking they looked like the suspects. She sincerely apologized and says she only locked them in because the security guard told her to do so.
Now this afternoon, I did talk to that security guard, and he called me and he denied telling her to lock the door. He says he was only involved because of the Subway employee calling him, and then he called police. A police spokesman told me that the girls should not have been locked in the store, and police are consulting with the Commonwealth's attorney to see how to move forward, including the possibility of abduction charges.
On social media tonight, it shows a Ball State student being removed from class by campus police.
Since then, the professor and the university issued an apology.
This afternoon, the student sat down exclusively with our Darius Johnson to share his side of the story.
Move your seat up, we can call the police.
That's not how Sultan Benson expected his marketing class to go with Professor Shaheen Borna on Tuesday afternoon at Ball State University.
When I walked in, someone happened to just be in my seat, and instead of making a scene, making a commotion with the last 2 minutes, I just decided after the professor asked me to sit in the back, take my seat in the back. It is what it is. No problem, no harm, no foul.
Benson tells me he proceeded to take a seat in the back, plug in his computer, and open his notes. Halfway through the hour and 15-minute class, things took a turn.
So then he asked me to move my seat, and I just was like, why are you singling me out of everybody? And his excuse was because my laptop was open. Why am I moving in the middle of class? He legit stopped the class to try to move me. I've been back here on this PowerPoint.
After Professor Borna called police, Benson decided to walk out to avoid confrontation. He says officers encouraged him to file a complaint. I found Professor Borna on campus and asked him why he removed Benson from class.
I respectfully declined the interview.
As I continued to ask questions, Borna said Benson is allowed back in class Thursday, and he sent a letter apologizing. That letter reads, "A situation arose that I mishandled. As a professor at Ball State University, it is my responsibility to ensure that you and all of my students receive an excellent educational experience."
Are you being disruptive in the class?
No, I'm not doing that.
No. As for Benson, he says he doesn't feel comfortable returning to class tomorrow, and he hopes the university takes swift action.
I really want Ball State to do something. Like I don't really know, man. I really want them to do something that stands out, that's different. Like I don't want nobody else to feel like this.
In Muncie, Darius Johnson, Fox 59 News.
And we just learned the student met with the dean of the business school this afternoon. He tells us they agreed to place him in a different class with a different professor effective tomorrow.
A 17-year-old girl is suing the Baraboo School District, accusing it of failing to respond to her sexual assault and racial discrimination claims.
Well, we first told you about this story last night, but today our Jamie Perez sat down with the teen to find out what message she has for the district.
What Baraboo is doing is not okay.
Deja Banks says she felt unwelcome in the Baraboo School District since the first grade.
I'm being told I couldn't play with people because of my hair or the color of my skin. I thought there was something wrong with me.
She said she was 7 years old when the harassment started.
Every time an issue occurred, I would go and tell a principal. I would go to the office and ask to speak to a principal, and I would tell them what happened, and they told me that they would handle it, but it continued to happen, so I felt as though they weren't doing anything.
Banks said the problems continued for the next 8 years. In a lawsuit filed in federal court Wednesday, she details how she was harassed and bullied for the color of her skin, was called the N-word on numerous occasions, was called a cotton picker at one point, and experienced numerous cases of being sexually harassed by other students.
Well, one person would help stick up for me, but because of that, she also got harassed.
Banks said she hopes her lawsuit can open up the door for administration to push for more education on being culturally sensitive and that sexual harassment of any kind will be dealt with appropriately.
It doesn't feel right. Like, I was born there, and it's heartbreaking not being able to go to what should be your home and not feel like home.
We reached out to the school district today, and we were told they have not been served that lawsuit yet and would not comment without seeking legal advice first.
Now at 10, it is a prom night photo to remember for all the wrong reasons. Teens appearing to make hateful gestures, including the Nazi salute.
Now, this photo of Baraboo High School students spread across social media, and tonight it's getting international reaction.
That school district is discussing next steps. New at 10, Ricky Mitchell was at tonight's school board meeting and has reaction from that community.
Several residents expressed outrage and concern over this photo, and they recommended certain action that they hope the school board will take. The photo posted Sunday evening shows a group of junior boys posing for a prom photo last spring in front of the Sauk County Courthouse. The caption reads #BarabooProud. Many of the teens have their arms raised in what looks like a Nazi salute. It has sparked outrage among some people living in the small community.
I grew up knowing that Nazism was wrong, and I don't see how they could get this far in their education and not know that.
Greg Sacra told the board that his father was shot by a young German boy during the war.
This photo is a demonstration of an absolutely despicable attitude.
One teen in the photo didn't raise his arm. He said he was unaware of what was happening.
If I knew what was happening, I would have not been in that photo at that time because I don't believe that is right.
A group of people met at the Sauk County Courthouse today to take a different photo, one with the symbol for love.
This is not representative of the Baraboo community.
Karen DeSanto is the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club of West Central Wisconsin. She says she's worried about the boys seen in that photo, and she told the board they are going to need support.
We all make terrific mistakes. We are not perfect, so it's our job as adults to guide the kids into the best way that they can manage it.
A few community members said that they hope the district will provide additional education on the Holocaust. The district did not take any action tonight, but it did say that it's investigating this photo.
Jeffrey Perfumi, who's listed on the school's directory as Rocco, is now facing a battery charge because of an altercation with a student that happened during first period Tuesday here at Buddy Taylor Middle School.
This video, released by the Flagler County Sheriff's Office, shows 47-year-old Perfumi grabbing and pushing a 14-year-old student out of a classroom. WESH 2 News spoke with that student's father, who tells us they immediately wanted to press charges after watching this footage.
I was infuriated as a parent. You know, you send your kid to school and you expect for them to be able to go get an education in a safe, sound environment. And then I saw the video and that really took me over the edge.
An arrest report shows this started with the teenager playing music on his computer during class. Perfumi reportedly told the student to turn it down, and the student refused. The teacher then allegedly took the computer away, and the 14-year-old called him a racial slur. The student told investigators Mr. Perfumi grabbed him and turned him around and put him in a chokehold, and his feet were barely touching the ground when Mr. Perfumi shoved him out of the door. The student's father says his son should not have behaved disobediently, but he's also concerned his child could have been seriously hurt.
So you traumatize him mentally and emotionally, and not just him, but the other kids that have to witness that.
The victim's father also tells me he believes Perfumi should face more serious charges than a simple battery misdemeanor. In Flagler County, Chris Guardaro, WESH 2 News.
Flagler School Superintendent James Tager said in a statement, the actions of this teacher are not consistent with how we expect our educators to act and behave, and it will not be tolerated. We immediately removed Mr. Perfumi from the classroom following the incident and placed him on leave pending the investigation.
You're out of control.
Sure, okay.
Sure, okay. Videotape, because I'm going to the car and I'm shutting your phone off. Say to your nigger sister, hi nigger, I fucking hate you, fuck you, you ugly nigger bitch. I wish you were never born. You should have been an abortion. Fuck you, ugly nigger bitch. Fuck you, Hillary. Is that what you wanted? You got that.
All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, if we haven't learned by now, we have to understand that we cannot destroy the system from within the system. You can't change the system. It has to be destroyed. This system was built off of our destruction, and you cannot take out the roots without taking out the whole thing. And some of us call ourselves having allies, but the quote-unquote white liberal, they don't want this system destroyed. At the end of the day, they know this system protects them. They know it benefits them. We have to understand a lot of them have the mindset of, if we ever get in position, we're going to do to them what they did to us. They judge everybody off of their sick mentality. And some of us think, well, maybe if I get in good with them, then I'll be good. All you have to do is just do what they say and they won't bother you. But not only do they want to keep you as a second-class citizen, they're still going to bother you anyway, anytime they feel like it. But we run around here still trying to uphold their system, enforce their rules meant to destroy us, instead of having faith in ourselves to create our own societies, create our own rules, our own laws. But when we finally realize and catch on that doing the same things over and over again is going to get us the same results over and over again, then we'll be ready to make something happen. But as long as we keep trying to appropriate into the system, we're going to keep a system of destruction alive. One of the bloodiest riots of 1967 happened in Detroit during the Detroit Rebellion. And it started after the police raided a black bar, which they labeled communist, but really black organizations met there. And on a particular night that the police raided it, they were just having a party for 2 black soldiers that came home from the Vietnam War. Now, the police ended up arresting about 85 people, everybody who was inside there. And as they were being loaded on paddy wagons, a crowd started to form and they were watching the whole thing. And by the time the last people were taken away, somebody in the crowd threw a brick. And then more people started throwing bricks and bottles and rocks. And after a window in the cop car was busted out, the police took off. So then the crowd started turning their attention to all white businesses. And black business owners put signs in the windows so their businesses won't be destroyed because they were only going after white businesses. Now, again, the mistake that they made was not replacing white businesses with more black businesses and then not allowing others back into their community to take their money, especially when they don't spend their money with us. And then about 4 hours after the police raid, the crowd had got up to around 3,000 people. And they were still throwing bricks, rocks, and bottles, so the police sealed off the area. By about 10 o'clock that morning, the crowd was at about 8,000. And firefighters were called in to put out fires, but people started throwing rocks and bottles at the firefighters. Eventually, the mayor had to ask for help from the state police, and they called in the National Guard, and then tried to impose a curfew from 9 at night to 5 in the morning. But within 7 minutes of the first curfew, a black 16-year-old boy was shot and killed by the police. In that first night alone, 5 people were killed and hundreds were injured. In the black community, fed up with the brutality, some people started sniping at the police and firefighters. By 2 o'clock in the morning, 800 state police and 8,000 National Guards were called in. And they didn't ask any questions. They just started shooting at the looters. Then by midnight, as more and more people were being killed, the governor declared a state of emergency. And the president, LBJ, used the Insurrection Act of 1807, which was made for rebellious slaves, really for Haiti, to send in another 4,700 paratroopers, making Detroit the only city occupied by federal troops at least 3 times. And the police violated so many rights, searching people's homes and vehicles without permission, and just committing brutality against everybody, men, women, and children. One of the most known incidents during the riot happened at the Algiers Motel, which that movie Detroit was about. In that one incident, the police ended up killing 3 black men, Carl Cooper, Aubrey Pollard, and Fred Temple. And the only one ever charged for it was the one black security guard who tried to be involved. But by the end of the rebellion, at least 10,000 people participated and another 100,000 people watched. 43 people ended up getting killed, 33 of them were black, and at least 23 black people were killed by the police or the National Guard. 1,189 people were reported injured, and over 7,200 people were arrested. And most of the people arrested, of course, were black. And the oldest was 82, and the youngest was 4 years old. The police arrested a 4-year-old. And black cops helping enforce the system designed to destroy them were also targeted and shot at by the police, even in uniform. But still, we're the first one to die for American values. The first one to die for white supremacy, even though we're the biggest victims of it. In every war, we fight them in order to be able to fight for them. But we need to figure out how to channel that energy for ourselves. Because if we fight for this country, then we should be able to fight for our own freedom. In Prince George County, Maryland, a brother, William Green, was shot and killed by police while he was already handcuffed sitting in the police car. Now let's see how a brother already handcuffed and in the front seat of a police car, strapped in with a seatbelt, end up getting shot and killed by the police.
A police officer shot and killed a handcuffed man sitting inside of his own cruiser. This happened around 8 last night at St. Barnabas Road and Winston Street in Temple Hills. Michael Quander is there. And Michael, what have you learned?
Yeah, police tell us that suspect was handcuffed with his hands behind his back, strapped to a seatbelt in the front passenger seat of that police car. Now, take a look at this video. So far, here's what we know. This all happened around 8 p.m. last night when someone called 911 saying a driver hit multiple cars on St. Barnabas Road. Now, officers caught up to him and believe they smelled the drug PCP and put him under arrest. Now, again, that suspect was cuffed with his hands behind his back in that police cruiser with the seatbelt on. An officer got into the driver's seat. That's what investigators say. 2 separate witnesses say that they saw or heard some sort of struggle happening before that officer shot and killed the suspect inside of that car. Now, since the news broke last night, one of the biggest questions people are asking is why was the suspect in the front seat of that police car? Officers say that that was business as normal. That is how they transport suspects to go to jail.
Police have not said exactly what time. Police Chief Hank Stawinski says it appeared William Green was involved in multiple collisions as he drove through the intersection of St. Barnabas Road and Winston Street. Police say Corporal Michael Owen and another officer were called to an address in the 5000 block of Winston Street. According to charging documents, a witness told the 2 officers that Green was asleep in his car. Police say Owen and the other officer saw Green asleep. A spokesperson initially said the officers thought Green's car smelled of PCP. Chief Stawinski later retracted that claim to clarify that Green was not on PCP. Police say Corporal Owen handcuffed Green behind his back and put him in the front seat of his police cruiser. Police say the other officer heard gunshots about 5 to 10 minutes later and were told that officer went back to the cruiser and found Green still handcuffed in the car with gunshot wounds.
Now, it started after somebody called 911 after they saw this brother bumping into cars. Now, when the police got there, they said they thought they smelled PCP. But this brother could have been having a medical condition or anything. So when the police approached him, they said this brother was in the car asleep. So they arrested this brother and called in the drug unit. So they put this brother William Green in handcuffs and sat him in the front seat of the cop car and even put the seatbelt on him while they were using a police dog to search his car for drugs. Then somehow this brother in handcuffs, strapped in the front seat of a police car, ended up getting into an altercation with the cop Michael Owen, who was black. Now, witnesses, and they call other cops witnesses, said they heard loud bangs while they were struggling in the police car. And then they heard gunshots go off. And when they ran over there, they saw this brother William Green still in handcuffs, still in a seatbelt in the front seat of the car, but he had been shot and killed. Now, of course, this cop Michael Owen didn't have a body camera and he was put on paid vacation. But we already know about the blue wall of silence, and we know these cops are going to stay on code as they usually do, right?
A short time ago here in Prince George's County, District Court Judge Robert Heffron said the accusation that police officer Michael Owen fired into a handcuffed unarmed man 7 times makes him a threat to public safety, especially since if Owen were released on bail, he might have access to guns in the home he shares with another active duty officer. Heffron denied bail to the accused police officer, who's currently in jail. The large family of shooting victim William Green gasped and let out a muted clap, one family member blurting out, "Thank God." The family did not speak with reporters as they left the courthouse. According to testimony in court, Green hit a number of cars while driving on St. Barnabas Road Monday evening. A bystander blocked Green's vehicle after he stopped. Owen and another officer found Green asleep and unresponsive behind the wheel, arrested him, handcuffed him, and put him in the front seat of Owen's police car. 5 to 10 minutes later, the other police officer reported hearing gunshots, ran to Owen's car, and found Green, quote, still seated and handcuffed behind his back in the passenger seat, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, charging documents said. The victim was absolutely no threat to him, said prosecutor Renee Joy. When paramedics arrived, he was still handcuffed behind his back, the statement of charges said. Green had no weapons, according to the documents. So Officer Owen stays in jail for now, and meanwhile, scrutiny of his career accelerates. Prosecutors told me they will now review a 2011 shooting in Palmer Park where Owen shot and killed Rodney D. Edwards, a man accused of pointing a loaded gun at Owen. A second look at the case has been launched at the request of Edwards' family.
So now as a black cop, they didn't waste any time and immediately charged him. The police came out and said they didn't believe PCP was involved at all. They said they didn't find any weapons. They even said they didn't even find evidence that the cop had got into a fight with him. And this is the first time I've ever heard the police deny somebody got into a fight with them. Now, if only they could do these kind of investigations in other cases. Because in this case, instead of looking into the person that was murdered background, this time, for some reason, they're going to look into this cop's background and bring up everything that he ever did. A judge even called him a threat to public safety and said he shouldn't even be released with an ankle monitor. And you see how fast the police responded in this case. They came out and condemned him immediately. But now I wonder what the difference is in this case.
Police in Prince George's County, Maryland say one of their officers responded to 911 calls last night that reported a driver hit several cars in suburban Washington, D.C. The apparent driver was arrested, as this cell phone video shows. Police say he was handcuffed and put into the front seat of a police car with a seatbelt fastened. Both the officer and the suspect were African American. What happened next is now under investigation. Police say the two got into some kind of struggle inside the car, and the man, still wearing handcuffs, was shot several times. He died at the hospital. Relatives identify the man as William Green. His fiancée wants to know how he could have been a threat.
When your hands is behind your back in cuffs and you strap down, you move, handcuffs get tighter and tighter.
Late Tuesday, prosecutors filed a slate of charges against the officer.
I have directed our Special Investigations Response Team to charge Corporal Michael Owen with second-degree murder, manslaughter, and associated weapons charges.
Green's fiancée still wants answers.
I'm hurt. I loved him. He was loved. He didn't deserve that.
Now, usually cops are rarely charged, and when they are, it takes months to even years to even see them get charged. But this black cop, Michael Owens, found out real quick he's not a part of the club. They'll throw you under the bus quick. And he thought he was a part of the blue wall of silence. But it's not designed for us. It was never meant for us. So many of us had to fight to death for people like him to be that much a part of it. And they hit this black cop with a list of charges, including murder and manslaughter. But to condemn this black cop is to show their hypocrisy. But they show it all the time because this is what they do. Now, if you're going to be a black cop, you might as well do it for something that is going to benefit you, something that will protect you. If we're going to fight, we might as well fight to build our own system. We might as well fight for our own freedom. Because at the end of the day, we are all we got, and there's no other way around it. And until we realize that and get on code, then we're going to continue to get the same results.
In 100 places, Detroit is afire. 100 square blocks are now under siege. And as you walk through the area, people shout from their homes, "Watch out for the snipers."
It began early one Sunday morning in late July.
police raided an unlicensed bar in a black neighborhood in Detroit. A crowd gathered. Tempers flared.
This is going to happen all over America. It's going to be a hot world, not a hot summer. It's a hot world.
A rock was thrown, and the city became a war zone.
Several hundred rounds squeezed off. Now all of a sudden it's silent. Tense quiet, everybody looking around.
The fires burned for 5 days.
You were patrolling the streets of Detroit in the midst of all of this mayhem.
It was unbelievable mayhem.
In 1967, Ike McKinnon was one of only 100 black police officers on a force of 5,500 in Detroit.
I said, my God, this is happening to my city.
The fire has been raging for more than 30 minutes. The people have been evacuated, and yet the firemen are unable to respond.
Black Detroiters in particular were routinely singled out for abuse, for excessive profiling, arrests, really an overall criminalization of black Detroiters that white Detroiters simply didn't experience. God damn it. Policing was used to, keep white neighborhoods white.
Growing up, Ike McKinnon had seen many young black men singled out for abuse at the hands of the police. He was one of them.
I was 14 years old and I was beaten up by 4 police officers. They grabbed me, the name calling, they proceeded to beat me up.
Was this standard operating procedure?
This was SOP for these guys. That evening, I made a decision. I was going to become a Detroit police officer. I wanted to make sure that those kinds of things didn't happen to me or to other people.
But driving home in 1967 after a long night patrolling Detroit's burning streets, McKinnon's badge and blue uniform offered no protection.
2 white officers pulled me over with their guns drawn. And I said, police officer, and smiling as I am now, I said, police officer. I had my badge. I stepped out of the car. The older officer with his gun drawn, he said, tonight you're gonna die, nigger.
This is a cop.
This is a police officer.
Telling another police officer,
yes.
I'm gonna kill you.
That's right. He said, tonight you're gonna die, nigger. I see his finger pulling the trigger. And as I dove back into my car, he started shooting at me. I hit the accelerator with my right hand, the steering wheel with my left hand, and I drove off as he was shooting at me.
What did that tell you?
If a person is of that mindset to me, a fellow officer, what the hell is he gonna do to the rest of the people in our city?
43 people died during those 5 days in Detroit. More than 1,000 were injured. 2,000 buildings destroyed. Some 400 families left homeless.
The Webb family came back to what was their home on Harrison Street to salvage what did not burn and try to find a reason for last night's destruction.
3 teenagers, Carl Cooper, Aubrey Pollard, and Fred Temple, were among those who died, shot to death after police raided the Algiers Motel, searching for snipers.
There's a bunch of police outside right now.
What happened that night is the subject of a new film.
Let's not be stupid in this situation.
7 black men and 2 white women were severely beaten, but survived. Their stories tell a tale of brutalization and terror. John Boyega plays Melvin Dismukes, a black security guard who was also at the Algiers that night.
Fella here had a knife, tried to go for my gun.
Do you think about those young men?
I think about it constantly.
Dismukes still works as a security guard. To this day, some have not forgiven him for being the face of the law that night.
I had to move out of the city because of the threats against me. It's rough.
There were threats against you from both sides?
I wouldn't, no, I said usually just from one side.
Which was?
The black community.
Dismukes was tried for assault in 1968. He was acquitted by an all-white jury. None of the 3 white police officers at the Algiers that night were convicted of any wrongdoing.
It's every city in some respects, and that's why 67 mattered. It's why it matters that we get it right, what happened. And it's why it matters that we look at Detroit carefully today.
A small town Georgia mayor is making national headlines today for all the wrong reasons. Thanks for staying with us at 6. I'm Sharon Reed.
Hi, everybody. I'm Thomas Roberts. She is accused of blocking the potential hire of a black man to lead the city, fearful it might upset the majority of white citizens. Chief Investigator Jonathan Carlson is the only live reporter in Houston tonight pushing for answers. And Jonathan, I know you were trying to track down the mayor. Did you find her?
Yeah, we finally did within the last hour, guys. Good evening to you. This meeting just ended somewhat chaotically. You can still see people coming out of the town hall here. The mayor was confronted about the allegations, and eventually she just got up and left. Before she went in, she told us exclusively, "I'm not prejudiced." The small city of Houston, 50 miles north of Atlanta, is without a city manager, and today, it seemed, without a mayor.
Hello.
Jonathan with CBS 46. Is the mayor around?
No, she's not.
Okay. Do you know where we can find her?
No, she has not been in the office at all today.
Teresa Kennerly is still technically the mayor, but no one at City Hall could reach her. At least that's what they said. We drove around town visiting her listed addresses and couldn't find her there either. The mayor is accused of privately telling fellow council members she pulled the resume of a black candidate for the city administrator position because she didn't feel the city was ready for a black man to lead it. One council member telling me privately today her alleged words and actions were not meant to be outwardly racist, but nonetheless, if true, she may have put the city at risk of violating civil rights laws, which protect minorities from job discrimination based on race. As words spread, so did protesters, some locals calling for her ouster.
Utter shock! I don't live in a world that's supposed to be thinking like this. This is 2019 now.
Within just the last 30 minutes, we caught the mayor arriving for tonight's city council meeting and approached her for comment.
I can tell you that I love this town, I love the people, and I am not prejudiced.
A change in leadership for a small town that's been in the national spotlight because of racial tensions.
And this all comes after a city council member spoke out against interracial marriage. It sparked a recall campaign in the town of Houston. CBS 46's Brittany Miller is live there with more on the council member who resigned today. Brittany.
Right, and now former city councilman Jim Cleveland did not show up to the special meeting tonight. Neither did the mayor, but many people that I spoke to here were not surprised by that. They were, however, surprised by that resignation. A handwritten letter that shocked an entire city.
After 10 years of service.
Houston City Councilman Jim Cleveland unexpectedly resigning just 24 hours ago.
I, Jim Cleveland, do hereby tender my resignation.
Voters listened as the city council moved to formally accept the resignation.
I will make the motion to accept the resignation of Councilman Jim Cleveland on behalf of the citizens of Houston and every member of the city in which he has offended.
Newly elected Councilman Shantuan Ashton is talking about Cleveland's reportedly racist statement that he was against interracial marriage.
And his actions offended a whole lot of people, not just people with my skin tone, but other people as well.
Cleveland allegedly made the disturbing comment while defending Houston Mayor Teresa Kennerly. She apparently pulled a resume of a black candidate for city administrator because of his race, saying the city wasn't ready for that. Local political parties asked for Cleveland and Kennerly to resign, but they refused.
We wanted this months ago. Months ago.
So neighbors started a recall campaign to force them out. That was set for next month.
We didn't expect him to resign. We expected him to get to the recall, and the people vote him out, of course.
I'm crying, I'm calling everybody. The whole plane is staring at me and wondering if you're okay, and I was just in a complete panic.
Local author and activist Ijoma Oluo was at the airport in Boston when she received a phone call from the King County Sheriff's Office about a report of gunshots at her home. She posted about the experience on social media to shine a light on what happened to her.
Nobody wants this for their kid. Nobody wants someone showing up with rifles at the door to wake their son up. And no one wants to hear that they were told there were 2 dead bodies in their house.
Immediately, she thought it was a hoax. The author of So You Want to Talk About Race says she was recently alerted she was on a website.
They had me categorized as an anti-white writer and activist. And they try to get people who are looking for someone to scare and someone to hate.
She says the website listed her address and the addresses of her family members.
And they had these emojis next to the name of the people. There were hundreds of names. And there was a gun. And if the gun showed up, it meant that they had successfully swatted that person.
Swatting. It's the kind of call that's been received here before.
I have 5 hostages in my house at the moment. I want $5 grand. I'm going to kill them all.
This is Seattle police video of officers responding to a hoax about a year ago.
Sounds more and more like swatting to me.
Consequently, they will weaponize first responders and use us as police who are there to help as a tool to harass and frighten innocent, unsuspecting individuals.
To combat those calls, Seattle police created a registry where residents concerned about swatting can let the 911 center know.
What that does is provide us here at the 911 center supplemental information to help the response.
Luckily, we had some measures in place so that the police department knew I was at risk.
She had let the sheriff's office know a few weeks ago about the swatting threat made against her. So when today's 911 call came in around 6 a.m., they knew to contact her directly, and she told them her older son was home alone.
I am so glad I had done that and that they had called me and reached me, because otherwise, you know, they would have come storming in, and who knows what could have happened.
Well, this author decided to post her experience on Twitter to make other writers and activists aware that this does happen. She also encourages them to contact their local police department if they're concerned that they could become the target of swatting.
The hardest thing about this is then tracking down the people who are doing it, because there's no clear way to catch them.
Right. Police are saying today that sometimes the people behind it spoof phone numbers. It's very difficult to catch them.
A Warren police officer pleads not guilty after investigators say that he lied about being shot. Elizabeth Noreka joining us now with more on why the chief's plea for public forgiveness is happening. Elizabeth?
Natalie, the chief says this is a setback for his department. They have been working on building a relationship with the community, and says this most recent incident is not only disgusting, but it is not what the department stands for. 23-year-old Warren police officer Noah Lennon appeared in court today. He's accused of lying about being shot after stopping to help a man with a disabled vehicle. Lennon pleaded not guilty during his arraignment today. He's charged with tampering with evidence, falsification, interrupting public service, and inducing panic. He was arrested on Tuesday. Prosecutors say on January 13th, Lennon was off duty when he first reported that he stopped to help an African-American male. Lennon claimed he was robbed and the suspect shot him in the right shoulder area. It was later determined that Lennon was not shot. Not only did close to 50 cruisers try to respond to the scene, they were also searching for suspects, even at one point detained 2 men. The chief says Officer Lennon never had any problems before, and the whole thing is upsetting. City leaders are also upset that race was injected into the incident.
I want to publicly apologize to the community. It is a huge setback from all the work that our men and women have done with the community, and we're going to move forward from this. He doesn't represent the Warren Police Department, and that's not what we stand for.
This is a national trend. When you talk about race, when you talk about these kind of issues, people are using that throughout this country. And here we're saying in Warren, Ohio, and abroad, we're not going to handle it. We're not going to accept it.
Lennon's bond was set at $10,000. The police chief says he expects the officer to be terminated by the end of the week.
It's a public place supposed to be filled with information and inclusion, but to Ashley Horace, it now represents trauma. She's a grad student studying library science through Columbia University. She's been to several libraries across the Houston area to observe song and play through story time, and says she's never had a problem until now.
As soon as I got to the door, a lady stood in front of the door blocking the door, almost as if she didn't want me to come in. And I said, she said, you know, why are you here? I was like, oh, I'm here for story time.
Eventually, she got in and sat in the back of the room. A few minutes later, the same employee told Horace her manager said she had to leave.
And she said, if you don't leave now, I'm going to call the cops. And I was like, call the cops. What did I do? She said, I'm going to call them and tell them that you're trespassing.
5 West University police officers did show up. After speaking with Horace and the manager, they told her the manager has the right to ask whoever she wants to leave, and said this appeared to be a misunderstanding. Here's audio from one of the officers' body cams.
She's making a big deal out of this. Sure. I didn't do anything. I didn't even get out of my chair.
That's, I'm not going to cite you or anything like that. There's no criminal violation or anything like that, okay?
In the day and age where people of color have had 911 called on them for arguably innocent reasons, Horace feels there was more to this.
I said, you know, why are you doing this? If my skin weren't brown, you wouldn't be doing this. And she kind of looked like, you know, shocked. But I knew that was the only reason. I've been in here before. I've been to the neighborhood. I've been to the library before, and that's never happened before.
According to Harris County Public Library officials, Horace was asked to leave because she didn't have a child with her during story time. Even though that's not a written policy, they do consider it a best practice because they've had incidents where people have shown up to play with other people's kids. They call it a case of miscommunication and says Horace is welcome back to story time as long as she gives advance notice. Horace says she still doesn't have a clear understanding of what happened.
I was almost shell-shocked. I was like, what is going on?
Student athletes at King Philip suspended over racial slurs against their own teammates. It is a disturbing incident, and it did not end there. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Lisa Hughes.
And I'm David Wade. Police say the teenagers then called one of the students' mother and sexually harassed her over the phone. As Shantae Land shows us, the school is taking a stand tonight against the students and this behavior.
No, that's crazy. That's crazy. I don't know what people are thinking.
Several King Philip Regional High School football players ages 14 and 15 have been suspended from school and games after school officials say they used racial slurs back on October 2nd. Rentham police say around 2 black teammates.
They pretty much came clean, explaining that, you know, they were using phrases out of popular songs that play now that use the N-word.
Police say the players also repeatedly called one of the black teammates' mothers to make inappropriate sexual comments. A school staff member told their resource officer, which prompted an investigation. Police questioned 10 students.
The investigation concluded that these kids are carelessly, recklessly using the word.
Police say no charges have been filed, but the school superintendent sent a letter home to parents, reading in part, "I want to emphasize this type of behavior is completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in our school community. It not only violates the policies of King Philip Regional School District, it creates an unwelcoming and hostile environment for our students and families." Many parents attending a girls' soccer game say the allegations are disturbing, but hate to have the incident overshadow the success of all the sports teams.
The football team is going for the Super Bowl. They're undefeated. I just hope that that letter doesn't overshadow what a fabulous job all these kids did.
And the school has created what's called a cultural proficiency group. The goal is to help students in the district address racism.
MSU officials continue to investigate a racist note left for a student inside her campus apartment. Shatanya Clark had the chance to speak with that student today and her family. She joins us now with our top story.
Sophomore Taylor Gardner says her roommates allegedly left a note on a whiteboard that she believes was geared toward her. Upon leaving her room for her 8 a.m. class on Tuesday morning, Gardner noticed a note on the whiteboard in the living room she shared with her roommates that read, "Time to go pick some cotton," and then in parentheses, "cotton fields," a statement that has many still in shock. The photo first surfaced on social media when Taylor's older sister, Jessica Page, expressed disappointment on the alleged act of racism toward her sister. This is Taylor Gardner's first semester at MSU, but says this was not the first act of discrimination toward her by her roommates. So this was her last straw.
Once I had a Black History Month program on the refrigerator, they didn't know I was at home. I was in my room and I was hearing them in the kitchen talking about it, like, what is this? And the next time I went into the kitchen, it was thrown away. So that kind of made me feel like they was being passive-aggressive in a way.
Some students here at MSU believe what happened to Taylor highlights a much bigger problem concerning inclusivity on campus.
Would you go that far, in my opinion, to do that to someone, especially in today's culture where it's not accepted at all?
MSU housing officials have moved Gardner in a new apartment in a different building. Now, MSU officials weren't available to talk with me on camera today, but the university is investigating what happened to Taylor. They did release a statement saying all forms of discrimination will be addressed as we work to ensure an inclusive environment for the MSU community.
Leaders at Michigan State University apologizing today for a controversial display at a school's performance center gift shop. You can take a look at the display yourself. Many are calling it racist, saying it shows historical black figures hanging from a tree. Following public outcry, the school removed the display and sent out a statement to apologize, but some students say it's just not enough.
I don't want to be constantly confronted with images and displays and, these messages. Like, all the time. Like, it's a painful response. It's a painful reminder.
An MSU spokesperson says that all volunteers and employees at the Wharton Center will be getting racial bias training.
It's a handful of racist letters mailed to multiple Snellville businesses. The letters say they do not want any more black businesses in the community. CBS 46's Adam Murphy joins us live. Adam, you're in the Snellville Oaks Shopping Center on Main Street. This is where some of those notes were found.
That's right, Sean. 3 businesses in this shopping center received the same letter. One of them right back here, Celeb Styles Barbershop. Needless to say, they were beyond appalled at the content.
It's a really great community.
There is a good vibe inside the Celeb Styles Barbershop on Main Street, even after the owner received an offensive letter in the mail.
After receiving that letter, man, it really broke my heart to receive that, because again, that's not who we are. We are a community-based barbershop. We're here for the people. We want to service all people. Everybody's welcome.
The same letter was sent to neighboring businesses like Gravity Trampoline Park and Burn Boot Camp. And this is what it said: to whom it may concern, we in the Snellville community want it to be known we don't want any more N-word businesses in our community. We want Gravity, Celeb Barbershop, and Boot Camp gone. Too many N-word businesses. We will not support them.
That's not a reflection of the whole city of Snellville.
Carl said the letter is offensive and heartbreaking, and whoever sent it knows nothing about them.
We've been here for about 8 months, and within the first 2 months of being here, we did a major charity event where we gave away 200 free haircuts, we gave away school supplies, we gave away 500 book bags.
Anybody who comes in here always comes back, because you know, it's just the vibe and the tone that we set and the things that we try to do for the community.
In the spirit of being charitable, because that's what we are, I would like to offer anybody who's watching this, the first 10 people that walk through the doors, I'm offering the first haircut free, the first 10 people.
Amtrak has apologized to a civil rights attorney after she said she was asked to give up her seat on a train at the start of Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. The conductor asked Sherilyn Eiffel to move, saying there were other people she wanted to give the seat to, but there were no assigned seats on the train. The company says it apologized. It's also looking into the incident.
A Homer Glen woman is now charged with a hate crime after a fight outside a banquet hall. Sarah Benain is accused of punching and yelling racial slurs at an African-American woman. The Will County Sheriff's Office says she also hit a deputy before being arrested. Her boyfriend, Lucas Harnick, was also charged with resisting arrest.
I'm looking at the journalist Felicia, and she is somebody who has gone through sexual assault herself. And she said that in the Washington Post. She released an article a couple of years ago detailing her experience. So as a journalist, which is not what we do, we are a talk show with opinion.
But you were a journalist,
and I was a journalist for 10 years prior to taking this job. So as a journalist, it's our job to objectively report the news. I know that that would be tough if you're someone who survived sexual assault. But when I'm looking at this story, she didn't give the story any context. And she got upset that she was being attacked on Twitter for tweeting a link that basically was condemning Kobe's character and accusing him of rape. But I think her job as a journalist was to put that in context. You have the responsibility, and you need to have the journalistic acumen to write the full story. Go to the Washington Post and say, this man is a nuanced character. This man has a detailed, layered history that we need to discuss. But don't just tweet that out and be the political reporter for the Washington Post and tweet that and leave it there, because you're leaving yourself open to the attacks that you're now receiving. And so whether or not she should be fired, you know, I think that she should be put on leave like she was. I think it's inappropriate because we're in a time where we don't know what journalism is anymore. We have our president that attacks journalists. We have TMZ that broke the news to Vanessa Bryant that her husband passed away. You know, what are we doing now that we need to look at ourselves, people who call themselves journalists? We have journalists attacking a 7-year-old child, which is Blue Ivy, and we look at them calling out her characteristics. We need to do better altogether as journalists. And I look at this woman and I say it was your responsibility just to do better and give it more time than 2 hours after the man passes away to say what you think about him if it's negative. And, you know, don't hide behind somebody else's article. I stand behind a journalist named Jillian Sheldon. She sat at that Kobe trial for 6 weeks. She followed it in Colorado, in and out, stayed there, interviewed all the lawyers, interviewed the woman who was accusing him. And she said, how can we use someone's worst day on this earth as a referendum on their character in totality? And we can't, because just like Kobe, we all have flaws and we're all layered individuals. And we've seen this story time and time again, too many times when it's a black man and a white woman that's an accuser, when that's the story and it goes down and he just goes and gets convicted by the public jury. And we've seen the story too many times where women who have been sexually assaulted cannot give their voice to the public and are not given the space they need need to share their story. So this is a complicated thing to talk about, but I really think that as a journalist, if you're going to take that name and that stance and that dignity of a position, you should probably do it properly and just try to tell the complicated story with as much care as possible. And that goes for everybody involved in this Kobe situation.
Wow.
Have some empathy for other people. You know, people lost their lives. And so we have to just step back and remember that, you know, this man was a legacy and a legend for so many people. He's also a complicated human, but we cannot just assassinate his character when he's dead and can't even defend himself. We just have to do better.
So I say this with love to the Grammys, because you really need to know this. Every year, y'all be killing us, man. Man, I'm talking about the pain. I'm speaking for all the artists here, the producers, the executives, the amount of time that it takes to make these records, to pour your heart out into it, and you just want an even playing field. In the great words of Erykah Badu, we are artists and we are sensitive about our shit. We are passionate. For most of us, this is all we got. This is our only hope. Truth be told, hip-hop has never been respected by the Grammys. Black music has never been respected by the Grammys to the point that it should be. So right now, this current situation is not a revelation. This thing been going on. And it's not just going on in music, it's going on in film, it's going on in sports, it's going on around the world. And for years, we've allowed institutions that have never had our best interests at heart to judge us. And that stops right now.
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RP to the brother Mubarak Soulemane and the brother William Green. And if we're going to continue to do this for a system designed to destroy us, why not do it for our own? We can't continue to depend on a system that has historically murdered us to give us justice. That's not what it's designed to do. If we want justice, we're going to have to build our own system. There's no other way around it. We have to learn how to put our petty differences aside, whatever tribal differences we have, in order to ensure the best possible future for ourselves, for our children. Nobody's going to protect us but us. We have to start having confidence in ourselves. And once we do, we'll realize we already had the blueprint. We just have to be ready to protect what we build, because believe me, they're going to come. But trust me, it's worth it to have our own, for us to be free, for us to control our own food supply, for us to create our own laws, our own rules, our own punishments. Because as long as we try to hold up somebody else's rules and punishments, they're going to throw us under the bus, because they're always going to look out for themselves. We have to look out for ourselves, because at the end of the day, we don't have any other choice. We have to support each other. We have to forgive each other, and we have to love each other. And we have to be ready to protect each other. We have to build our own code. Now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.